Hi guys, welcome back to another Hugh video. In this video, I'm going to be restoring this Toshiba Satellite Pro 4270 from the late 1990s. This laptop was given to me for free by one of my former high school teachers a few weeks before I graduated in 2019. It has been sitting around collecting dust for about a year as I didn't have a charger for it or even know if it worked. As any laptop from this era, whether PC or Macintosh, is absolutely loaded with ports and expandability, something missing from modern laptops. I believe laptop makers from this time tried to accommodate what the user might need or want from their device, whereas in present times I feel many manufacturers are only accommodating to what they are wanting. Of course, to be able to even test out this machine, I'm going to need a power supply. Instead of investing in one that would only work with this device, I decided to get a multi-port charger so I could use this on multiple different laptops. This cost me just shy of 100 Australian dollars, so definitely wasn't cheap, but should do the trick as it's got the appropriate connector for my needs. Therefore, even if the laptop doesn't work, I still have plenty of other uses for this charger. Connecting the appropriate adapter, you can see the power supply is reading 15 volts, which is correct for this laptop. I can plug it into the back and we can see the charging LED is blinking, which indicates something is happening. I'm going to press and hold that power button and thankfully we see a splash screen and an error about the CMOS battery. From here on out, I'm just going to exit and not change anything in the BIOS and see what happens. After rebooting, it tries to boot into Windows but is coming up with a missing file error, so it appears Windows is corrupt or the hard drive is failing. One interesting thing is if I press any key on this screen, the whole computer has a meltdown. I did speed this up a bit, but you can see the whole screen fades away and lines appear on the display. I'm not entirely sure why this happens, but I don't believe it's the graphics card. After another reboot, you can see the laptop is back up and running. But if I press the key again, it would just completely melt down and fade away. So with this error, it's time to reinstall Windows 95 to see if we can get this laptop up and running. So I burnt an ISO image to a DVD so we can get that reinstalled. I chose Windows 95 as the one floppy disk I received with the laptop was the driver for Windows 95. One issue I ran into is when it was formatting the drive, it got to 70% and proceeded no further. I left it for about 40 minutes and it didn't get anywhere. At closer inspection, the hard drive was clicking, so it was definitely dead and Windows wasn't actually erasing anything. So I need to pull out this dead 6 gig hard drive from Toshiba and replace it with something else. I'll be using an 80 gig IDE Western Digital hard drive. I found this drive at an abandoned property my friend used to own. Someone had dumped a huge amount of electronics, including some old iPods, which I never did get fully working. So yes, this hard drive was left outside possibly for many years. The enclosure it was in was covered in rust, but the drive itself works fine. I would never recommend using a drive that's been outside, but in my case, it's the only IDE drive I have, and it's not like I'm going to be putting anything important on it anyway. So if it fails down the track, I'll replace it with an SD card and an adapter, but for now, it's going to get the job done. It is looking a little bit dirty and a few of the pins on the connector are a little bit bent, so I'll do my best to try and straighten those out. I couldn't get them perfect, but as long as they plug into the connector, we should be good to go. I'll need to remove the 4 Phillips head screws, securing in place our dead 6 gig Toshiba drive so we can swap across our slightly used 80 gig Western Digital drive. After attaching the screws, I can slide the caddy back inside our laptop and apply some force so it can secure into the connector before fastening the one screw holding it into place and the other screw holding on the door. With our replacement hard drive inserted, we can try and reinstall Windows 95. Unfortunately, I got that weird display glitch happen again, so I had to restart the laptop manually, and this time around, I was able to format the drive and it succeeded with no errors. It took over an hour to do that, and afterwards, I could finally set up Windows 95 before we could get started with this machine. Of course, it glitched out again, and we could reboot into 95, and this time around we actually got to a desktop. I'm a little concerned at all these glitches, so hopefully I can figure out what's causing that. With absolutely no drivers installed, you can see just how tiny the display panel looks, and I'm stuck in a really low resolution. I did get one driver floppy disk, which I tried to install, but it turns out that it couldn't read the disk as it was slightly damaged. So I turned my attention to the internet and downloaded some drivers onto a DVD. However, after rebooting the computer, I couldn't get back into Windows. It kept displaying issues that I had insufficient memory or that I had an error at a certain memory address. So I need to turn my attention to the RAM as I think it might be faulty. I'll take off the access door and pull out this 128 megabyte stick. With it dated from 2007, this laptop was used at least up until then. I replaced the dodgy stick of RAM with the only other module I had, which was 64 megs. With that installed, I wanted to take a look inside and replace the thermal paste before we test out the laptop again, as the fans were running really loud. This entire laptop is held together with Phillips head screws, which means you don't really need any special bits to get this open. After removing all of the bottom screws, I'll need to remove this little plastic piece below the keyboard, which houses some more screws to remove that keyboard, and then under the keyboard itself is, you guessed it, more screws. There is one screw and bracket holding in the keyboard, and folding that over will reveal a ribbon cable which we'll need to remove. With the keyboard out of the way, I'll need to remove 3 more screws underneath as well as 2 around the back, disconnect 2 cables, one of which is going to the display assembly, and then lift the whole top of the laptop off. From here on out, you can see the inside of our laptop. From here, I'm going to remove the heatsink and fan assembly so we can get a closer look at our processor, as well as apply some new thermal paste and give that fan a good clean. After removing the heatsink, I noticed something a little bit strange. It looks as though there's a processor on top of another, but in reality it's an adapter board so the CPU can plug into the socket. So the question now is, has someone upgraded it? The fan is also looking quite gross, so we're going to give that a clean out as well while we're inside the laptop. As for the motherboard, it's also looking spotless, so it's now time to move across to our fan assembly. I'm going to brush that out. I can't fully disassemble this fan as it's been riveted shut, so I'll just do my best to brush out as much of the dirt inside as I can. Proceeding, I can remove the old thermal paste. It looks as though someone has reapplied it at some point, as I can see some old paste marks. What is currently applied looks to be some kind of strange thermal pad. It's got a load of circles on it which break away, so I'm thinking it's the wrong type of pad for this application. With that removed, I'm going to take out the processor so we can get a closer look at it. Here you can see the processor has been soldered onto this board, which adapts it to the correct socket that it's currently plugged into. I still can't find what model it is, so we'll have to see when we boot the computer up into Windows. Installing the processor and applying some thermal paste, I'll clean out the grill on the side before reapplying the heatsink and screwing all the Phillips screws in at a diagonal pattern to ensure even pressure is applied over our processor die. After connecting the fan cable, we can now turn our attention to the mouse buttons. The top right button wasn't working, and you can see why. Someone has opened this computer and have routed the cable over the button so it can't be pressed. I'll need to lift up the button array and run the cable underneath to fix that issue. With that done, we can take a look at our CMOS battery, but unfortunately it's a proprietary one, so I won't be able to swap that out. With the inside looking good, I can reattach the top case and LCD panel. After connecting the 2 cables, I can then clean away some gunk that has gotten underneath the keyboard before fastening the 3 Phillips head screws and reconnecting our flex cable for the keyboard. Carefully plugging that in, I can fold across the keyboard and get it secured into place by attaching the lower bracket and 1 screw. I'll then reinstall all of the case screws which hold the top assembly to the laptop. Reattaching the hard drive cover and its 1 screw, I can slide in our battery and we can flip the laptop over. I'll give the keyboard a bit of a clean before we get the lower plastic piece installed. Clipping that plastic piece back in, we can finally test out our laptop and see it no longer has any RAM errors or graphics issues, and successfully boots right up onto the desktop of Windows 95. In properties, Windows reports a Pentium Pro CPU, however CPU-Z reports an Intel Celeron. According to the original specs, this computer came with a 500 MHz Celeron, so it appears our strange looking CPU is in fact just original. In terms of battery life, I disconnected the charger to see what would happen, and it stayed on for a couple of seconds before entering hibernation mode. The battery charge indicator never stayed solid, so I'm surprised it even had any charge in it at all. After reconnecting the cable though, the machine resumed just fine back onto the desktop. It's now time to give this dirty laptop a clean. Starting with the track point in the center of the keyboard, it's used to control the mouse and it has become almost black with dirt. Cleaning it off using some alcohol and a cotton swab, I can then move up higher and clean above the keyboard to remove all the dust and grime. There was also a few stickers I'll need to remove. It looks like this laptop was once a school-owned device and was likely used by the teacher who gave it to me for his job back in the day. I'll also remove any other dirt buildup on the rest of the laptop using a microfiber cloth and more alcohol. Lastly, I'll wipe down the LCD panel and we're done. So this is it, a late 90s Toshiba laptop in perfect working condition. This laptop brings back memories of our family PC that ran Windows 98 and all the joys of dial-up internet, around 2007 I believe. This laptop is equipped with a 500 MHz Intel Celeron, Savage IX graphics and 128 MB of RAM, 64 being built in. In all this messing around with the laptop, the battery began charging, likely as it had now passed its minimum charge threshold for a lithium-ion cell. After letting the laptop charge for around an hour and a half, I unplugged it to find it now has a working battery. How long will it last? I'm not quite sure as I haven't yet tested this to its full potential, but you can see outside it's still functioning, even in the bright Australian sunlight. It's amazing, as this battery is somewhere between 20 to 25 years old and hasn't been charged in likely over a decade. Many batteries won't charge if they're left flat for too long, so it's important to keep charge in a working battery and remove it from the laptop when it's not in use. You may have noticed this weird tap icon on the F2 key. Unfortunately, it's not high-tech enough to turn on the sprinklers outside, but it can adjust the power level based on a few presets programmed into the laptop. Of course, it's Windows 95, so the software is pretty familiar to a lot of people, so I won't dive in depth in this video. The trackpoint mouse is definitely difficult to navigate with, although I'm assuming someone in the 90s could have gotten used to this. The keyboard also feels quite nice. One strange quirk is I can set the resolution of the display higher than the LCD panel can handle. In this mode it lets you scroll around the screen as you can see here. Quite strange. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffreys video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button and consider checking out the computer playlist for more videos just like this one. And if you're looking for any tips or what tools I use to repair devices, be sure to check out my website, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.